Imagine stepping into a painting. Not just any painting, but a swirling psychedelic landscape where every brushstroke pulses with energy and every color vibrates with emotion. That's the world of Psychonauts. A game that doesn't just pay homage to the post-impressionist master Vincent Van Gogh, it lets you live inside his art. But the connections between Van Gogh and Psychonauts run deeper than just visual style. The game taps into the same themes of mental health, artistic expression, and the search for identity that defined Van Gogh's life and work. Just like Van Gogh's influence extends far beyond the walls of museums, Psychonauts is a part of a broader cultural conversation that includes the vibrant world of street art. And at least one of my friends' special fixation interest. Because all of my friends have at least one.
Viva spicy brains!
Yeah, it's just like pretty much any time I meet someone and we click really well, I'm like, you definitely have ADHD, but also what flavor of autistic are you going to end up being? There's a church like, yep, nope, this is why we get along. So today we are going on a journey that takes us from the wheat fields of Arles, I think that's how you pronounce it, to the twisted corridors of the mind, from the museums of Paris to the streets of modern cities. Along the way, we'll discover how a 19th century painter revolutionized the way we see the world, how a 21st century game studio translated that vision into an interactive experience, and how street artists carry on Van Gogh's legacy of turning inner struggles into public art. Because let's be real, most of us art's about the only therapy we can afford.
Yep.
It's great therapy, but also therapists are expensive.
Sometimes you just have to choose, okay, therapy or paint. Dang it. Now we're going to talk about Van Gogh's artistic revolution. So before we dive into the game, let's talk about the man who started it all. Vincent Van Gogh wasn't just a painter. He was a rebel, a visionary, and, let's be blunt, a deeply troubled soul. When he looked at the world, he did not see static landscapes or posed portraits. He saw energy, emotion, and the pulsing undercurrents of the human psyche. Van Gogh's brushstrokes were like a seismograph of the soul, recording every tremor and eruption of his inner world. He painted in a frenzy, layering on thick strokes of paint that just seemed to writhe and swirl on the canvas. His colors were just as intense. He often chose these vivid yellows, these acidic greens, and these deep, dark blues that almost glowed with this, freaky intensity. But Van Gogh wasn't just painting pretty pictures. He was trying to capture something deeper, the essence of emotion, the inner world of the mind. Every landscape was a self-portrait, every still life a meditation on morality. Or mortality, one or the other. In paintings like Starry Night and We Feel with Crows as examples, we see an artist grappling with the fundamental questions of existence, the beauty and terror of nature, and the struggle to find meaning in a chaotic world.
Yeah, his work has been truly inspiring for so many, but back when he was alive, his talent was not recognized, which is tragic.
Very. You just have to wonder that if people took a better look at it or tried to understand him more, would that have transformed his art, or would it continue to exist kind of on the fringes until later on?
We'll never know, but this actually is a good time to detour into the episode of Doctor Who that is Vincent and the Doctor, where it starts with Amy and the Doctor are in an art museum and they notice there's a monster in one of his paintings. It was a painting of a large building where you could see a creature in the window. So they went back to basically figure out what's going on. So they got to work with Van Gogh and see how he treated his art and some of how he sees the world. I have some quotes pulled up here. He says this as he is holding hands with the doctor and with Amy Pond. Try to see what I see. We're so lucky we're still alive to see this beautiful world. Look at the sky. It's not dark and black and without character. The black is in fact deep blue, and over there, lighter blue, and the visual effect going on as it is turning into the starry night. And blowing through the blueness and the blackness, the wind swirling through the air, and they're shining, burning, bursting through the stars. Can you see how they roll their light? Everywhere we look, complex magic of nature blazes before our eyes. The doctor responds, I've seen many things, my friend, because he's like 700 or 800 years old at this point. But you're right. Nothing quite as wonderful as the things you see.
This again reinforces that I really need to watch more Doctor Who. That is awesome.
I absolutely love the show, and they're able to solve the issue, which is like this invisible creature that's lost, and they're able to help it. But there's a moment near the end where they take Van Gogh to the future so he can see the museum and the exhibit that is all of his work. So another quote for you is the doctor approaches and asks the museum curator, as Van Gogh is standing right there, but I just wondered, between you and me, in 100 words, where do you think Van Gogh rates in the history of art? Well, big question, but to me, Van Gogh is the finest painter of them all. Certainly the most popular great painter of all time. The most beloved, his command of color the most magnificent. He transformed the pain of his tormented life into ecstatic beauty. Pain is easy to portray, but to use your passion and pain to portray the ecstasy and joy and magnificence of our world, no one had ever done it before. Perhaps no one ever will again. To my mind, that strange, wild man who roamed the fields of Provence was not only the world's greatest artist, but also one of the greatest men who ever lived. At this point, Van Gogh's crying, and let's be real, we're all crying after watching this, because it's just beautiful.
Dang. I have to heartily concur. That is, I feel that if Van Gogh could have heard how his paintings would have been seen afterwards, it probably would have given him some solace.
Probably would have, but also in that episode, it didn't change how Van Gogh's story ended. And when Amy makes a comment about we didn't make a difference at all because they went back and she expected to see more paintings, but there weren't. The way I see it, every life is a pile of good things and bad things. The good things don't always soften the bad things, but vice versa. The bad things don't necessarily spoil the good things and make them unimportant. And we definitely added to his pile of good things. Kindness is free. Even a small act can have a big impact, and you never know. That's why it's good to show that kind of kindness.
I have a little bit more respect for Doctor Who in general for that writing, because that is deep.
Doctor Who definitely has some good moments. It also has silly moments where lines are specifically written to make it hard for David Tennant to not slip into a Scottish accent. But moving on, let's take a look at a few of his iconic works to see how Van Gogh translated his inner world onto the canvas, starting with the one that we all know, The Starry Night. This is from 1889. You've probably seen this painting a million times. It's one of the most famous images in the world. But have you really looked at it? Like, really looked at it, not just seeing the poster, but looking at the swirling energy that underlines the composition, how the sky feels alive, the stars and moon are radiating out these hypnotic swirls. It almost gives you a sense of longing, something like you're trying to reach out to something infinite and unknowable. Like when you look up at the night sky and you see all those little stars. I don't know about y'all, but that makes me feel both incredibly small, but it gives a sense of belonging almost. Like, this universe is huge, is full of deeply weird and incredibly beautiful things, and I'm part of it. And I'm here for a reason, and so are you. This painting captures the dizzy wonder of looking up at the night sky and feeling both insignificant and connected to something vast and eternal.
Starry Night was one of my first introductions to Vincent Van Gogh. A little bit more context on this particular piece. It depicts the view from the east-facing window of his asylum room in Saint-Rémy-de-Provence just before sunset, or sunrise, wow, with the addition of an imaginary village. It has been in a permanent collection at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City since 1941. Acquired through the Lily P. Bliss bequest, it is known as one of the fundamental pieces of modern art. The Starry Night actually, ironically enough, because of Doctor Who, there is a actual depiction of the TARDIS in combination of the Starry Night painting as well.
Yeah, that came from an episode later in the season where a minor spoilers I'm not going to give context for, but also because this episode came out years ago. It's a painting of the TARDIS exploding in the style of Starry Night. And it's stunning. But when it shows up in the show, that is deeply concerning. Because it's not supposed to do that. And that's also happening kind of right in the middle of some of the Doctor Who and Riversong story arc, which is a story arc that I absolutely love, even though I definitely got spoiled on who Riversong is with the very, very first episode of Doctor Who I ever watched. With absolutely no context, it was the episode Let's Kill Hitler, where there's multiple spoilers, including the identity of Riversong. So I knew who she actually was before we met her in the show. Though I will say, that did not make the reveal any less Mostly because there are multiple implications I did not understand. I knew Doctor Who existed. I watched that episode. I'm like, I don't know what just happened, or why any of this was important, or who any of these people are. But it's weird and I like it. So I started watching it my freshman year in college and was caught up in time for the 50th anniversary special, which I had to watch twice because what? Holy implications. So many implications in that one. Have you seen any of Van Gogh's work in person?
Yes. The posters that you see, or the reproductions of just the digital, it does not do it justice. The amount of the visible brushstrokes you see in Starry Night, Sunflowers, or any other of Van Gogh's more well-known pieces is just mind-boggling. You can feel the personality in those brushstrokes just with how much it's been built up and the care that what on the surface looks random. When you see those brushstrokes up close, you realize that he meticulously went over and over and over to build this up.
Which just adds to the beauty of it. And I wish someone could in real life go back and show him, hey, your work is appreciated. One day you will be celebrated and so many people will be deeply inspired by what you've done. And what all he dealt with while doing all of that. He was definitely neurospicy.
Most definitely.
I don't know for sure what his diagnosis will be. I don't know if anyone has figured that out, but there are probably very solid theories from people who know a lot more about that than I do. But he was a very troubled man who saw the world in a very unique way, worked very hard to recreate that in a way that people can understand, and it took a long time for the world to catch up with them and be able to understand.
Agreed. The fact is that Van Gogh's work has gone so far beyond just the gallery pieces, but to inspiring other people in various types of media, even artists, helping kind of push back on some of the mental illness stereotypes, that it's not just the tortured artist, there is beauty in that madness.
And also mental health care is important, and we should get rid of the stigma so people can get the help and support that they need, so they don't have to suffer like he did. I'm a big proponent of therapy and psychology, and getting proper medication is needed, and counseling, and all of those wonderful, wonderful things. You don't have to be struggling with mental illness to be an artist. Art can definitely help in your processing those struggles, though, when you've got the neurospicy brain. Which, if you're friends with me, you do. It's not even like a probably, you do.
Guilty. And the Starry Night is a great insight into Van Gogh's mental state. Initially, there were a lot more people who believed this had religious symbolism. However, this seems to have more in recent years. Some of the more prominent art historians do feel that the swirling sky had links to more contemporary astronomical discoveries, as well as, of course, the expression of Van Gogh's personal struggles. Ironically enough, he was critical of the painting, feeling that it was a failure to his brother Theo. Turns out, yeah, it was not a failure. It was one of his more seminal pieces.
I mean, it might not have accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. I just had the random thought, because when you have astigmatism, it changes the way you see bright lights at night. I wonder if there was something with his eyes or the way his brain processed visuals of darkness versus light that caused him to see the night sky in that way.
There is definitely some schools of thought behind that, just because of how Van Gogh often described painting his dreams, or what he sees in his dreams, that everything seemed to have its own flow and vibrancy.
Could he have had synesthesia?
Considering that everything kind of had its own feelings to him, I'd say that could be a great hypothesis.
Yeah, some version of that where like certain sounds or sensations would conjure up certain visual images in his head, and that would also explain why he would get frustrated and not see his work as portraying what he was trying to make it portray, because it might not have been fully possible for him to get that down on paper. That didn't make his work any less stunning, though.
Yeah, it's nice to know that even back then, there is the running commentary of artists painting masterpieces. Everybody else is going, this is amazing, and the artists themselves is going, this could be better.
I mean, there's always room for improvement, but after a certain point, you just have to say, okay, I'm done with this, I'm moving on to the next thing. This is what it needs to be, time to move on to the next thing, and call this done. I say as someone who often has to call people out on stop overthinking and do the thing, Watson.
I was about to say, I'm pretty sure it was referring to me, but since you just dropped my name, yeah, guilty.
You are not the only one, but yes.
I accept the criticism gladly, because sometimes it's the type first, think never theory.
Moving on to our second piece, though, since I've already called you out, I believe this next one is yours to discuss.
So, of course, the next piece that we were going to discuss is Self-Portrait with Bandaged Ear. This one was painted in 1889. This is one of the most intense self-portraits ever painted, in my opinion. Van Gogh stares at us with a gaze that's both confrontational and vulnerable. His eyes slightly symmetrical.
Asymmetrical?
Yeah, thank you. His mouth set in a tense line. The bandage on his ear, of course, refers to the infamous incident where Van Gogh cut off part of his own ear in a moment of madness. But what is truly striking here is the way Van Gogh doesn't shy away from his own pain. He presents himself as he is, damaged but defiant, using the act of painting as kind of this self-surgery as a way to almost heal the wounds of the soul.
His face is very thin, and this one compared to some of the others that I've seen, almost gaunt, especially down near the jaw. He looks a little grumpy. He's got his fluffy hat on. There's a couple versions where he's smoking a pipe. There's just something about the way the eyes are painted. It might be just like the shade of green. It's brighter than the green of the grass shown from like the window behind him with the people. Just kind of feels like he's just staring at you. Mm-hmm. It's almost like he has a look of like when someone's brain just kind of like disconnects from the current situation. Like he's just zoned out, tapped out. He's not all here. But he's trying to be.
Mm-hmm. It is, in my opinion, one of the more striking self-portraits I've seen of many artists. Where others would depict themselves as like kind of these visionaries or creatives, Van Gogh does not shy away from it, or shy away from what he is. Also, interestingly enough, this piece does feature a subject matter that we have discussed previously, the ukiyo-e, displayed in the kind of the small print that is behind him in this picture.
Oh, is that a painting of a print?
Yes. Van Gogh was actually fascinated by the ukiyo-e imagery and often kind of tried to study and just paint his own stylistic version of it as well.
That is fascinating, and given how we have discussed ukiyo-e in depth, it is a very fascinating field of art to study, and I think it's really cool that he found inspiration in that. And even though he did a different style of art, he still learned and grew from those prints. And yeah, I agree that it is something about this self-portrait stands out, because not only is he not sort of like more heroic or dashing, this man's not okay. He's not doing okay. And he's not afraid to show that he's not doing okay. It's almost like he's asking for help, or coming to terms with the fact that he is not in a good place.
Very accurate. And for those curious, the reason for the particular ear incident and this portrait was an act committed a few weeks earlier following a heated argument with fellow painter Gauguin, who had come to stay with him in Arles, in the south of France.
So he had an argument with another painter, and then a couple of days later sliced off part of his ear.
Yep.
Not gonna lie, part of me is wondering if he's actually the one that did it, or if he just said he did.
That would be a interesting theory to chase, because yeah, there's very little information on that particular situation.
It could have happened where they started fighting again, or maybe it's one of those where you know how sometimes you have like conversations with people in your head? You like think through it? He might have been reliving that argument or having another argument in his head, but there was just something that made it feel more real, like something was actually happening, or he could have truly believed that he did it. But I mean, in my mind, I can't see a man chopping off part of his own ear, but given that could have happened. Whether it was intentional or not, it did happen. And he showed the world.
And interestingly enough, there is 2 German art historians actually have written up a thesis on Gauguin actually have committing the ear mutilation situation. So there is actually some concrete findings on it that possibly could point to more information.
Thanks for listening to An Unexpected Art Lesson, the show where we talk about everything you didn't know about art. This week, continuing to focus on the art and impact of Vincent Van Gogh. If you like what we're doing, you can follow us on social media and join the conversation over at An Unexpected Art Lesson on Threads, Blue Sky, and Substack. And you can also support us over on Patreon, get early access to episodes and other fun things at patreon.com/anunexpectedartlesson.